Hi, this is Little Dwarf, and I know I'm a little bit late to the party, perhaps, but I just recently finished Portal 2 for the first time, and by all accounts, I should have loved it. People overall loved it, it seems. The Metacritic scores for both the first game and Portal 2 are very high, but Portal 2's is just a little bit higher, at least on the critics review scale. It's 90 for Portal 1 and 95 for Portal 2. As far as the user score is concerned, it's actually lower for Portal 2, if only just by a little. It's 9.2 for Portal and 9.1 for Portal 2. So maybe I'm not totally insane for not loving the second game all the way through, despite what people have been telling me. And what's not to love anyway? At first glance, it seems to just be improved in every possible way compared to its predecessor. In many ways, Portal 1 felt like an extended tutorial or a proof of concept. Portal 2, in turn, feels like a full-fledged actual game. It's longer, it has its own story besides just you're a test subject overseen by a crazy robot, complete with a secret or two revealed along the way. And it utilizes every mechanic from the first one and then expands upon them, adding new layers of complexity. So on top of the two portals, cubes and buttons from the first game, you also have lasers which replace the energy balls, laser redirection cubes, jumping plates, and 3 different types of special gels. One making you jump higher, one speeding you up, and one letting you convert a non-portable surface into one you can place a portal on. And it's all pretty well explained. You are sneakily tutorialized on the new mechanics when they are introduced in a simple way at first, but then get more complex as you go. I myself got stuck a couple of times in Portal 2, but that's just because I'm incredibly dumb. Overall, I'd say the game's design is great at teaching you what you're supposed to do, and it's very careful with protecting you from accidentally locking yourself in and making progress impossible. I got stuck a couple of times, as I said, but I never had to reload after falling into an unescapable pit or anything like that. And it's not that I hate Portal 2, or even dislike it particularly strongly. I enjoyed my time with the game, and I can totally understand how for some people it's a straight upgrade from the first game and overall a better product in every aspect. So, what is my problem then? Well, without beating around the bush, I think humor in Portal 2 was so over the top that it destroyed my suspension of disbelief and overall made the game worse instead of better. Now, you're probably thinking, is this guy an idiot or what? Humor is, alongside the puzzles, one of the pillars of the Portal games. The answer I have for you is yes, sometimes probably, and yes, obviously you're right, respectively. I totally understand that humor is important, or maybe even crucial to maintaining the proper atmosphere of a Portal game. After all, the first game relied on it a lot as well. So what has changed for me? It's not that I have a problem with humor in Portal 2 by itself. I actually rather liked it. Stephen Merchant as Wheatley was a great addition, for example, even in his delivery itself, without counting the actual writing. The lines made me chuckle more than once.
Most test subjects do experience some cognitive deterioration after a few months in suspension. Now, you've been under for quite a lot longer, and it's not out of the question that you might have a very minor case of serious brain damage. But don't be alarmed, all right? Although if you do feel alarmed, try to hold on to that feeling, because that is the proper reaction to being told that you've got brain damage. Do you understand what I'm saying at all? Does any of this make any sense? Just tell me, just say yes. Okay, what you're doing there is jumping. You just jumped. But never mind, say apple. Apple.
But my problem with Portal 2's humor is that it's so over the top, so unbelievable, so straight up batshit insane at points, that it cannot in my mind be rationalized as part of a real universe pretending to any kind of seriousness in terms of stakes or themes. Portal 1 had a lot of plausible deniability in that regard, I feel. It was pretty absurdist in its approach to humor as well. Pretty silly, some would say. But the thing is, you didn't know a lot besides the fact that GLaDOS was controlling the facility and that she was completely insane. Why are the turrets talking in childish voices?
Searching, put me down. It's me! Shining no hard feelings.
GLaDOS made them so, and she's nuts. Why is GLaDOS ranting about cake? Well, remember one of those scores you pulled off her in the finale? It seems she had her memory flooded with cake recipes as a last-ditch attempt to short-circuit her after she turned against her creators, and so on and so on. GLaDOS was undeniably crazy to the last optic fiber cable of her being, and it could explain a lot of what was happening around you, however silly it was. Madness, at least in fiction anyway, sometimes manifests in acts that would strike most of the sane people as pretty silly after all. And the same sort of excuse worked for some things in Portal 2 as well, in my opinion. Whitley, for example. He was rather silly after all, but he was literally programmed to be stupid in an attempt to lessen the danger posed by GLaDOS by clouding her intelligence. Does that make scientific sense? Probably not, but it was a good enough explanation for me. Whitley sounds like a silly idiot because that's his function, even in universe and in lore. So okay, I can buy it. But then there's Cave Johnson, the CEO of Aperture Science. For me, it all fell apart the moment Cave Johnson entered the scene. And that's because Cave Johnson is completely batshit. He's so insane that he probably shouldn't even be able to function in society properly. But he certainly shouldn't be able to lead Aperture from a curtain-creating company to a scientific powerhouse and the maker of numerous breakthroughs. And even if he could do that in the beginning, he would certainly be removed by the board of directors, the shareholders, or whoever he was responsible before as a CEO, and equally as likely, he would actually be in jail due to some things he has done and then straight up admitted to doing on an audio recording. I just couldn't take Cave Johnson seriously, not in the way he was presented. If he went insane later on and was removed from his leadership position, then maybe. But the recordings tell a story of a man who has stayed in power at the top of the company for decades, all the while being probably one of the most unstable and batshit insane people around. Just listen to a couple of his lines.
For this next test, we put nanoparticles in the gel. In layman's terms, that's a billion little gizmos that are going to travel into your bloodstream and pump experimental genes and RNA molecules and so forth into your tumors. Now, maybe you don't have any tumors. Well, don't worry. If you sat on a folding chair in the lobby and weren't wearing lead underpants, we took care of that too. All these science spheres are made of asbestos, by the way. Keeps out the rats. Let us know if you feel a shortness of breath, a persistent dry cough, or your heart stopping, because that's not part of the test. That's asbestos. Good news is the lab boys say the symptoms of asbestos poisoning show a median latency of 44.6 years. So if you're 30 or older, you're laughing. Worst case scenario, you miss out on a few rounds of canasta. Plus, you forwarded the cause of science by 3 centuries. I punch those numbers into my calculator, it makes a happy face. If you've cut yourself at all in the course of these tests, you might have noticed that your blood is pure gasoline. That's normal. We've been shooting you with an invisible laser that's supposed to turn blood into gasoline, so all that means is it's working. Go to the bathroom after this next series of tests. Please let a test associate know, because in all likelihood, whatever comes out of you is going to be coal. Only temporary, so do not worry. If it persists for a week, though, start worrying and come see us, because that's not supposed to happen.
He straight up admitted to giving people cancer. I imagine that's probably a jailable offense, but even if not, that can't be good for the PR of Aperture. He was seriously planning changing people's blood into gasoline and their excrements into coal. That's not a visionary speaking, that's just insane. He once had a long-winded rant about how when life gives you lemons, you take them and then burn people's houses with them.
When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Make life take the lemons back. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemons! What am I supposed to do with these?
Take the lemons.
Demand to see life's manager. Make life rue the day it thought it could give Cave Johnson lemons. Do you know who I am? I'm the man who's gonna burn your house down with the lemons.
Oh, I like this guy.
I'm gonna get my engineers to invent a combustible lemon that burns your house down.
Was it hilarious? Sure. Could I buy this man staying at an important position for a long time and actually achieving measurable success at a grand scale, in fact? No chance in hell. Just try to imagine Cave Johnson trying to explain to the board of directors and the overall decisive structure of Aperture that he wants to allocate actual funding to the project of attempting to change people's shit into fossil fuels. How does that sound? Does that sound like a plan you would listen to? Does that sound like words of a very stable genius? Another example, the PSA system in the beginning of the game. I initially imagined it's actually a cover for GLaDOS. I thought she was masking herself because after all, you've defeated her once, so you could do it again. And it made sense to me because the PSA system's messages were pretty insane as well. But in the end, nothing came of my theory, so I guess I'm just supposed to imagine that it actually was just a PSA system with pre-recorded messages, and it just doesn't make sense. Aperture spent actual money, real dollary dues, to record audio about an Animal King takeover doomsday scenario. They even made a cute video animation about it, and that sure wasn't for free either. Now, you could be wondering why I was okay with GLaDOS's silliness being explained with her insanity, and I have a problem with Cave Johnson's actions. He's insane too, after all, so case solved, let's go home. Well, I'm afraid it's not that simple. GLaDOS was not beholden to anyone at the point she went mad. In fact, her first action was killing every person who could question her insane actions. So sure, she was silly and acted a little nonsensically, but it didn't break the immersion because her madness was, you could say, self-contained. She was just insane and she did seemingly random stuff. Cave Johnson, on the other hand, had an important position and was a crucial voice in decision-making for years. He had people around him that could doubt him, and people he was accountable before that could question his judgment and his actions. People that probably wouldn't stand idly by and just let him do and say all of those crazy things. And sure, you could say that the board of Aperture, or whoever was part of the checks and balances system, just cared about money, and as long as Aperture was doing well, they let Cave Johnson ramble on. I would contend even with that point, because it seems to me that a lot of Cave Johnson's ideas would be monetarily pointless and would bleed Aperture dry after a while. But let's assume that's not the case. That still doesn't take into account the effect his insane ramblings, insulting the test subjects and straight up admitting to committing crimes would have on the company's public image and relations. And you know what the worst thing is? I could let it all go. I could just say, oh well, that's the world of Portal, it's supposed to be silly. That's the setting, like in a comedy story. Not everything has to make practical sense. But I can't. And that's all because of a simple detail. The fact that the Portal games actually take place in the universe of Half-Life. And that universe definitely wasn't designed as a silly place. Far from it, in fact. The world depicted in Half-Life is a bleak place. When the franchise was put in the fridge at the end of Episode 2, humanity has just slightly started to tip the balance in the apocalyptic war against the Combine. The war where the entire human race's existence was at stake, and the war that they've already lost once before and became subjugated to their alien overlords.
Satellites colonized by sentient fungi, gas giants, inhabited by vast meteorological intelligences, worlds stretched thin across the membranes where the dimensions intersect. Impossible to describe with our limited vocabulary.
What I've seen is also beyond words, Breen. Genocide. Indescribable evil. Good God.
And I am supposed to believe that in the same world, hell, maybe even in the same time frame, judging from some of the voice lines, there was a guy that made billions and billions of dollars and helmed a highly successful company, all the while telling people that he gave them cancer and that he plans to change their blood into gasoline? Come on, man. No, just no. And the most bitter realization is that the link between the Portal universe and Half-Life universe is so weak and so underutilized that it might have not existed at all and almost nothing would have changed. The Portal games name-drop Black Mesa a couple of times, and the Ship Borealis and Aperture Science competition with Black Mesa is mentioned in episode 2, and that's literally it.
Black Mesa can eat my bankrupt...
Sir, the testing?
Right.
Oh sure, from what it looked like, the Borealis and maybe Portal technology was poised to play a big role in episode 3, but we never saw that, and I doubt that we ever will at this point, so that shouldn't really count in my opinion. If the Portal universe was totally separate, then it could be as silly as it liked, and we would all have to just accept that as part of the convention, as we do with comedy ever so often. Comedy, especially absurdist comedy, isn't made to make logical sense. On the contrary, it's the lack of it that's funny half of the time. And I myself would have gladly done that. As I said, it's not that I disliked the humor in Portal 2 on principle. Far from it, in fact, I was pretty entertained. But in the end, the link between the bleak realities of Half-Life and the universe of Portal 2, however weak, dragged it down for me and made it devolve into nonsense in context. So maybe it's unfair to say that it was the humor that destroyed Portal 2 for me. Maybe it was Half-Life that did it, actually. Because when I think about it, I feel like I could be totally content with Portal 2's absurdist approach if it was a standalone product. Overall, while I had fun with Portal 2, in a way I was also disappointed. For all of the inconvenience the links with Half-Life caused it, they weren't even greatly expanded upon or utilized in great volume, which makes them seem like even a greater folly. I personally doubt that Valve will ever return to Portal, or even to making single-player games in general, but if they did, I would like for them to either concentrate on linking the two universes more closely and providing more context, so at least the setup doesn't feel so worthless and wasted, or, which might actually be a better alternative if one wants to maintain the absurdist tone, just retcon it all and make Portal a standalone. Like, maybe Cave Johnson actually imagined that Black Mesa even existed in the first place. It wouldn't even be the stupidest thing he did. So, that's my piece on how Portal 2 let me down in some aspects. It's my first video of this type, but I'd certainly want to branch out in this direction more, making scripted essays on video game subjects that interest me. Please note that English is not my native language, which is why I stumble with words sometimes, and the pronunciation isn't always the best, but I hope my point was clear throughout. So, if any of you watched it that far, please let me know what you think, and if you have any suggestions or criticism for the future. I would also be very interested in hearing your opinion about the actual content of the video, and maybe your counter-arguments to my problem with Portal 2's approach to humor. And with that said, thank you all for watching, that's all for this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!